No one noticed the moment it happened. That was the cruelest part of all. It was not shouted or announced with anger. It was not dramatic or loud enough to stop the room. It was spoken calmly, with the quiet authority of a man who believed his words carried the weight of truth. Victor leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and said it as if he were stating a medical conclusion rather than passing judgment on a human life. "She's mentally weak." The words did not echo through the courtroom, but they struck Eleanor Hartwell with devastating force. She felt them settle deep inside her, crushing something fragile and ancient that had survived decades of silence. She did not flinch. She did not argue. She did not even raise her head. She simply lowered her eyes, just as she had learned to do over 42 years of marriage. Silence had been her protection. Silence had kept conflict away. Over time, silence had become her identity. Around them, the courtroom continued its routine. Lawyers scribbled notes without looking up. The judge adjusted his glasses and turned a page. A clerk cleared her throat. Life moved forward as if nothing significant had happened. But Eleanor remained frozen in that single moment, replaying the sentence again and again in her mind. Not because it shocked her, but because it confirmed what Victor had been telling the world for years. That she was forgetful, confused, incapable. A woman whose mind had faded with age. What no one in that courtroom understood was that Eleanor had been preparing for this moment far longer than anyone imagined. Victor Hartwell had always been admired by others. He was a successful businessman, respected in his community, known for his confidence and composure. He shook hands firmly, spoke with certainty, donated generously, and sat comfortably in rooms where decisions were made. People trusted him instinctively. When Victor spoke, others listened. When Victor explained, others believed. Eleanor's presence, by contrast, was quieter. From early in their marriage, she had learned that her intelligence made people uneasy. When they were young, she had been sharper, quicker to understand, more willing to ask difficult questions. Victor had admired that part of her once. Then admiration turned into discomfort. Discomfort became resentment. Slowly and deliberately, he began to wear her down, not with cruelty, but with concern carefully disguised as care. "You're tired, Ellie," he would say when she challenged him. "You're remembering it wrong," when she recalled something accurately. "Let me handle this," whenever she showed confidence or ability. Over time, Eleanor stopped correcting him, not because she doubted herself, but because every correction came with a price. Being right meant arguments, cold silences, and subtle punishment. Silence became easier. Silence felt safer. By the time they reached their 60s, Victor had successfully rewritten Eleanor's identity for the outside world. To friends, family members, and professionals, he presented her as fragile and emotionally dependent. He insisted on managing their finances. He answered questions directed at her. He signed documents while assuring her it was all for convenience. Eleanor trusted him because trust was what she had practiced for a lifetime, even after learning how dangerous it could be. And when Eleanor finally began to see the pattern clearly, she realized something else just as important. Victor had underestimated her. Mental abuse leaves no visible marks. That was Victor's greatest advantage. There were no raised voices, no violent scenes, no witnesses who could describe what they had seen. There were only quiet corrections, subtle humiliations, and decisions made without her consent. Assets were transferred for convenience. Accounts were opened in his name alone. Important choices were presented as already settled. When Eleanor questioned any of it, Victor smiled kindly and reassured her. "You worry too much," he would say. "It's not good for your condition." Her condition. The word followed her everywhere. At medical appointments, during family conversations, in legal discussions. Victor never openly diagnosed her. He never had to. He allowed suggestion and repetition to do the work for him. She forgets things sometimes. She gets confused under pressure. She needs guidance. People nodded sympathetically. Because age makes doubt sound reasonable. Because confidence often sounds like truth. What Victor never knew was that Eleanor had been keeping journals for decades. They were not emotional diaries filled with feelings and reflections. They were records. Dates. Numbers. Conversations written carefully and consistently. Eleanor wrote not because she feared betrayal, but because her mind demanded order. She trusted facts more than comfort and documentation more than reassurance. Those notebooks quietly became her shield. The divorce filing arrived without warning. One afternoon, Victor returned home, placed a stack of papers on the table, and spoke as if he were announcing a routine decision. There was no anger in his voice, and no apology in his expression. He simply told her that it was time. "You're not well enough to manage on your own," he said gently. "This is best for both of us. Best for him." The petition claimed Eleanor lacked the mental capacity to handle finances or make independent decisions. Victor requested full control over their shared assets, citing her alleged cognitive decline. It was a move designed for efficiency rather than fairness, calculated to end the matter quickly and without resistance. Friends urged Eleanor to accept it quietly. They warned her about stress. They suggested she let Victor manage things the way he always had. Their concern sounded reasonable, even kind. But something inside Eleanor shifted permanently. For the first time in decades, she spoke without lowering her eyes. "No," she said. It was a small word, barely louder than a breath, but it unsettled Victor more than any argument ever had. The courtroom where they finally stood together smelled of old wood and paper. Eleanor sat beside her attorney with her hands folded neatly in her lap. She looked exactly the way Victor expected her to look: elderly, quiet, unassuming, easy to dismiss. Victor's legal team was confident. They presented medical suggestions, selective testimonies, and Victor's carefully crafted narrative. He spoke calmly about his concern for his wife's well-being, painting himself as a patient caretaker burdened by responsibility. When asked directly about Eleanor's mental state, Victor sighed softly, as if weighed down by duty. "She's mentally weak," he said. "I've been protecting her for years." The phrase settled over the room once again. Several people nodded without realizing it. Eleanor did not react. She had anticipated this moment. In fact, she had relied on it. Because arrogance always reveals more than it intends to. When it was Eleanor's turn to speak, Victor's attorney immediately objected. He questioned whether extended testimony was appropriate, given her supposed condition. The judge turned toward Eleanor with measured caution. "Mrs. Hartwell," he asked, "are you able to testify clearly?" Eleanor lifted her head. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied. Her voice was steady, calm, and unmistakably present. Then she did something Victor had never prepared for. She asked permission to present evidence. Not emotion. Not accusation. Evidence. Box after box was brought into the courtroom. Financial records spanning decades. Journals carefully cross-referenced with bank statements. Audio recordings capturing conversations where Victor contradicted his own claims. Contracts Eleanor had analyzed and understood long before Victor assumed she no longer could. Dates aligned. Numbers matched. Patterns became impossible to ignore. The courtroom fell silent, not from drama, but from clarity.